Hey everyone, ahlan wa sahlan fikum. Today's topic is a pretty interesting one of the most distinct trademarks of Arabic, the TA MARBUTA. We're going to talk about how it works and what it does grammatically, but also how and when it's actually pronounced. Let's unpack all of that right now. So, the TA MARBUTA, a letter that's not actually a letter, a sound that's not actually a sound. So what is it exactly? Well, the TA MARBUTA is technically not listed among the letters in the Arabic abjad because it's a sort of variation on the letter ta. In fact, TA MARBUTA means a ta that is marbut, meaning tied up. The reason it's a variation of the letter ta is because it's a ta that is not actually pronounced unless there's something attached after it. It's a hidden ta. But first of all, what is the TA MARBUTA for? You probably already know that it marks the feminine gender in Arabic. For instance, sandu is grammatically male, but ilbe is grammatically female. And there are only fringe cases that break this core mold. In the case of nouns, the TA MARBUTA is baked into the word itself, but in the case of adjectives, you attach the TA MARBUTA to the word to make sure its gender matches that of the noun it describes, as in sandu kbir versus ilbe kbire. However, the TA MARBUTA has other functions as well. The main one, aside from marking gender, is that the TA MARBUTA creates a singular, countable noun out of an abstract concept or a collective plural. For instance, layl means night, as in nighttime in general. However, one night is layle with TA MARBUTA. That's why the 1001 nights are alif layle u layle. Versus صارت الدنيا ليل, it became nighttime. Another example is ba'ar, the collective plural meaning cattle, whereas ba'ara is one cow. There are many examples of this, but remember that the effect is about turning abstract concepts or collective plurals into singular countable nouns. So if a noun is already singular and countable, which is most nouns, then this doesn't apply. So the basic use of the TA MARBUTA is not too complicated. But what is the letter actually supposed to sound like? As I said, the TA MARBUTA is a sort of hidden ta. When it's not pronounced as a consonant, the TA MARBUTA just sounds like an open vowel. In standard Arabic, the sound of TA MARBUTA is a, as in madrasa. In the dialect though, this is raised to e, madrase. So the default pronunciation of TA MARBUTA in Palestinian Arabic is e. But as we discussed in my video on vowels, there are some letters that significantly change the quality of the surrounding vowels, and this affects TA MARBUTA as well. These letters are the pharyngalized letters, which are those dark sounding letters like sa, da, ta, and za. Compare the name of the letter sa versus the dark letter sa. The sound of the alif goes from a, as in the word sand, to a, as in the word saw. Well, the same thing happens to the TA MARBUTA, which goes from madrase to, well, marbuta. Madrase, marbuta. The ta in the word marbut makes the e sound drop to a wide open a, marbuta. By the way, did you know that ra is actually pharyngalized as well? That's why it's ra, not ra. Anyway, this means that words with ra also change the TA MARBUTA to a, as in sayyara. Compare kitabe versus sayyara, mudde versus marra. However, there's one more snag that I didn't even mention in my video on vowels. I didn't want to overcomplicate things back then because this effect is mainly noticeable with TA MARBUTA and not so much elsewhere. In addition to the pharyngalized letters, there's another set of letters that can also slightly change the quality of their surrounding vowels. Basically all the consonants that are pronounced in the back of the mouth, specifically kha, gha, ha, a, and ha. These basically bring the TA MARBUTA back from an e to a regular a, just like in standard Arabic. For example, mniha, jami', luga. So in summary, there are three possible pronunciations of TA MARBUTA depending on the surrounding letters. You can have e as in madrase, a as in luga, or a as in sayyara. Aside from this, the main thing that could be confusing is when it's pronounced as a vowel and when it's actually pronounced as a ta. As I said earlier, the TA MARBUTA isn't pronounced unless there's something attached to it. However, let's examine this idea in more detail. The most obvious cases where the TA MARBUTA is pronounced is when there's a pronoun suffix attached to it. For example, sayyara, sayyarti, madrase, madrasetha. Here it's obvious that it should be pronounced as ta because the letter literally became a ta altogether. However, that's not the only way that something can be attached to the TA MARBUTA. Let's take the phrase madrasetha, her school. If we change this possessive suffix to an actual noun, let's say the girl's school, then the TA MARBUTA is still pronounced madrasetha, madraset il bint. Another way to look at it is that madrasat al-bint is an idafa construction, which is used to show possession or a similar kind of relation, and it turns the whole phrase into a single unit. Anytime the ta marbuta is in the middle of this construction, it's pronounced as ta, as in lahjat Palestine. What this means is that if the ta marbuta were at the end of this type of phrase, it wouldn't be pronounced as ta. For instance, شريت السيارة بعد ما صار معي مصاري. As you can see here, the ta is not pronounced because what comes after is not grammatically attached to it in any way. But even in the phrase السيارة حلوة or السيارة الحلوة, it's not pronounced because these are adjectives describing or modifying the noun, but they're not grammatically attached to it. Now compare لهجة فلسطين versus اللهجة الفلسطينية. And that's everything you need to know about the ta marbuta. We talked about what it does grammatically, how it's pronounced by itself, and when it actually becomes a ta. Do go back to the video on vowels if you want a refresher on that issue, because it can get a little bit tricky. Otherwise, I'll see you next time.